Hello, all. Welcome to the new series on cloud architecture comparison. To start with, I'll compare AWS Lambda serverless functions and Azure functions. AWS Lambda functions and Azure functions are both popular services for serverless computing, which allows developers to run code without worrying about underlying infrastructure. However, there are some differences between both of them. Here are some main differences. One is hosting plans, second one is configurability, third one is scalability, fourth one is pricing, fifth one is supported languages. Coming to the hosting plans, AWS Lambda only has one way to run serverless functions, which is to deploy it to the AWS Lambda service, whereas Azure Functions offers multiple hosting options such as serverless consumption-based option, app service plan mode, premium plan, Docker container mode, Kubernetes-based event-driven architecture trader. So we have so many variations in Azure functions, and they have also introduced Azure functions in Azure Container Apps. Coming to the configurability, AWS Lambda requires you to define maximum memory allocation for your function, which ranges from 128 MB to 3 GB. The CPU power and cost of running the functions are proportional to the allocated memory, whereas Azure functions allow you to specify the minimum and maximum memory allocation for your function, which ranges from 128 MB to 14 GB. The CPU power and cost of running functions are based on actual average memory consumption of the executions. Coming to the code, AWS Lambda supports uploading code in a zip file format. Azure Functions supports uploading code in a zip file, writing code in the portal, or using Visual Studio Code in some other tools. Both the services support multiple programming languages such as Python, C Sharp, Java, Node.js. However, AWS Lambda has more support for Python and Java, while Azure Functions has more support for C Sharp, F Sharp, and PHP also. Coming to the monitoring feature, AWS Lambda and Azure Functions both provide monitoring and logging capabilities for your functions. For example, AWS Lambda uses CloudWatch and AWS X-Ray to monitor metrics and traces of your application, while Azure Function uses application insights and log analytics to monitor performance and diagnostics of your functions. Triggers. Coming to triggers, both Lambda and Azure functions support various types of triggers, such as HTTP triggers, timer triggers, queue blob triggers. However, Azure functions has more trigger options than AWS Lambda, such as Cosmos DB trigger, which is recently added, and event grid trigger, signal or trigger, etc. Pricing. AWS Lambda and Azure Functions both charge based on the number of execution time in milliseconds, and memory allocation of your functions. However, there are some differences in how they calculate these factors. For example, AWS Lambda charges for full provisioned memory capacity, while Azure Function charges for actual average memory consumption. AWS Lambda rounds up execution time to the nearest 100 ms, while Azure Functions rounds up to nearest 1 ms, 1 millisecond. AWS Lambda offers a free tier of 1 million requests and 400 GB seconds per month, while Azure Functions offer free grant of 1 million requests and 400 GB milliseconds per month. So these are the differences between AWS Lambda functions and Azure functions. Azure functions also come in isolated mode, which is very handy when it comes to deploying newer functions, even when the .NET runtime changes. And we can even deploy these Azure functions onto Azure container apps. Here, these are the difference. Please stay tuned. We'll come up with new such cloud comparisons in coming days. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Bye bye. Please subscribe.